Hello, y'all. Oh my gosh, these videos are getting longer and longer. I can't tell if it's just because the Sermon on the Mount is important and it's Jesus and he's teaching a lot of stuff. Maybe it's just the chapters are kind of long. I know that there will be other chapters that won't be as long. But for now, thanks for sticking with me. So, the questions that we have. So, as we're learning about, right, the hypocrisy and the intentions behind the things that people were doing, how can we apply the principle of not seeking recognition in our own acts, whether it be there was charity, there was prayer, there was fasting? Um, that, let me actually open the Bible. I'm pretty sure those are the three. Yeah. So, not seeking recognition, right? So, just talk through that, some life examples of things that you do, maybe just being honest with yourself of how you've done things before and thought you would get praised for it, or wanted to get praised for it, or did get praised for it. And how can you hold on to the idea that the Lord knows what you do in secret and he will reward you, that he's proud of you, that he's on your team. And it's not all about just getting validation from other people, but it's just about doing the right thing, because that's the character development, right? That's where you're actually developing the character. And so then to add on to that, what's the difference between doing something for God's glory versus being seen by others? So I feel like we can kind of easily understand what it's like to do something to be seen by others, and just, again, being honest with yourself, checking yourself of that's what's happening and how that's kind of ick, and start to see it as ick rather than see it as normal and being like, well, yeah, we all just do things for attention. Be like, ugh, I don't know. But then what does it mean, or what would it look like to do things for God's glory? Right? Why are we vessels for God's glory? How do we bring him glory? How is us, bearing fruit where he says this is to the glory of the Father? So when you start to live and realize, okay, all these things I'm doing are bringing God glory, not about bringing myself glory. Okay, the Lord's Prayer. What do the key elements of the Lord's Prayer reveal about God's character and our relationship with him? But I do like talking about God and his character. But even again, the way we're talking to him, the way Jesus is talking to him, is showing him what our role is, what his role is. So what are the characters of God? And then what is our role in that? What's our relationship with him? And I thought this was cool too, is the idea of daily bread, which I didn't really tap into, even though it aligns with what we talked about later at the end with not worrying and provision, and how like the Lord provides for the birds and for the like flowers or whatever. That asking about daily bread, and I just kept talking about being present, and like today has enough worries of its own. The request for daily bread and our reliance on God, right? How does this challenge our reliance on God, or at least open our eyes to our reliance on God, of where it's like, and the whole point of that is in Exodus, when the Israelites get freed from Egypt and they're in the wilderness, the Lord provides manna, which was basically like a seed, like a flour. Flour meaning like flour, like what you bake with, so they could bake bread. But it was like this thing that they'd never seen before, never found before. And so in the wilderness, they were finding on the plants like this kind of seed-like thing that they could grind up, make it flour, and turn it into bread. And so it's like it would give the daily bread, though, because then the bread would rot, like it would go bad after a day. And so they needed to depend on him one day at a time. And so rather than us finding comfort and security in feeling like we have enough for months to come and years to come, like how we can understand that we only have today, right? We're not promised tomorrow. And so how having that mindset and realizing that if we have enough for today, we have enough, and how to depend on the Lord to get you through today. Even if the bills are due today, today's not over yet, right? So if the bills are due today, like get to the end of the day, rather than thinking, oh my gosh, tomorrow I'm going to be evicted when today doesn't get fulfilled. It's like, you still have today. So give him room to show up, believe and rely on him. You don't know that, I don't know, just what's going to happen, because there's so many stories that people have of things like that. Okay. What is the proper way to fast, and how does fasting contribute to spiritual growth and intimacy with God? I kind of tapped into this. I would say I will really tap into it. If you haven't watched my fasting videos, I just did a 3-day water fast. So you can watch those and see with your own eyes like what happened to me and hear the things that I talk about passionately of how you grow closer. When I talked about the difference between the spirit and the flesh, and how when we operate in the flesh, our flesh feels like the louder voice. But when you deny the flesh, it loses its power, it loses its voice, and your spirit becomes the stronger voice. And practicing that is so good because it puts your flesh in its place. So this one might be a hard one to answer if you've never fasted. And so I would say that's why it's so cool to experience it, because if you don't know how fasting contributes to spiritual growth and intimacy God with God, then it's important to just know that it does. Fasting does contribute to spiritual growth and intimacy with God. And so, like I said, this is kind of a good little toolkit, and you can at least answer the question: what's the proper way to fast? So that if you do look into fasting, you will have the right heart behind it. Um, okay, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Mm. I talked about it, but I think it's a good conversation because me talking about it isn't enough. You guys need to talk about it. You need to ask yourself these questions, talk with your friends about it, be honest with yourself. It needs to come out of your mouth what your truth is about your perspective of these things and how it applies to your life. Um, so, how can you tell if your heart is more focused on earthly treasures or heavenly ones? How can you tell if your heart is more focused on earthly treasures or heavenly ones? And how does the idea of storing up treasures in heaven, right? Or and just in the unseen, in love, in the realm of the Lord and the fruit of the Spirit, where you're going to have peace. Here's what's funny: everything we're chasing in the material is found in the spiritual. People think, oh, I want this car, this job, this relationship. But what you're actually wanting is peace. What you're actually wanting is love. What you're actually wanting is joy. And you have told yourself that you're going to find those things on the other side of the material, and you're not. And so when you hear the Lord offers you peace and joy and love, and it seems like, oh, I don't really want those things though. And, and that's like the part of, oh, I want to have fun and I want to be able to just party and do what I want to do and waste my life. I mean, that's a completely different mindset. But for those that are actually searching for good things, um, that's what the Lord offers. But it's just funny how when you hear the offering of like, well, He gives us peace and joy and love, and it's like, do I want that? If you're really honest with yourself, that is what you're searching for. Underneath all the other things that you think are the answer, you're searching for those things. And so that's why I'm saying when He's the treasure, He is the storehouse of those things. Because when you're fully satisfied in them, when you truly have peace, you don't run to the world. When you truly have love, you don't run to the world. When you truly have joy, you don't run to the world. So when you have all those things, you start to realize, oh my gosh, like I don't even need the world is so I'm so disinterested in it. Like you can have it. I'm okay. And so that's where that like rootedness and that confidence and that healthiness and that wholeness and all those things being healed because you're not convinced anymore. You're like, nope, no, thank you. Um, so yeah, how do the ideas of storing up treasures in heaven shape your view of material wealth and priorities? So understanding all that about treasure, does it change your view of material wealth and priorities? What are you prioritizing? Because like we said, you can't serve two masters. And so how does this relate to our commitment to God, right? Who is our master? Who is our Lord? Lord of our lives. These are the same words, right? Also, master and husband are the same word in Hebrew. And God says He's our husband, but it's like, which one's your husband? Which one are you married to? Which one is the one that you love? Um, and then I think about how it said twice, your Father knows what you need. But I love how in prayer it says your Father knows what you need, but ask Him anyway. Like it's like, now, don't make a show out of it and don't babble on in public for other people to see and think, wow, you're such a great prayer. But telling Him what you actually need and knowing that He knows what you need. He just wants you to bring Him in and invite Him in and let Him be involved in it. And then also with the provision and not worrying, where it says, like, don't run after these things. The world runs after trying to fill their own needs, trying to, again, say, I want peace and joy and love, and I'm going to go find it somewhere else, or just the most shallow sense. Like, if people aren't deep enough to realize they need peace and joy and love, The most shallow sense is I need food and clothes and water. And I'm not talking about charitable, because charitable, those people actually do need food and clothes and water. And that's why we give it to them, right? It's different when it's an actual base need that isn't being met. But people that have all their needs met, that are still fully consumed in now just like moving up in the luxury of their possessions or whatever, right? It's like you already have your needs met, but now you just want nicer possessions. Um, but how the Lord is like, I made you. I know you need food. Like, I know you need these things. Because even think about the people that we give to. We can say, oh, well, then why are there hungry people? The Lord's providing. He's providing through us. Every time I feed someone, that is the Lord. That's why they say, God bless you. That person just got provided for. They got enough food for the day. They got their daily bread, right? And so it's like, if that's what they need to get through the day, the Lord used me and my heart. And that's why we respond to the promptings, but to feed someone, to give them uh, like to be the answer to the do not worry because you will be provided for. It's like that's why we give to each other, because we're part of that story. We're part of the providing. Um, but it says, how does worry reveal a lack of faith in God's provision? Like I said too, it says you ask and do not receive because you doubt, you waver. And so when you start to worry and you're wavering, now you're self-fulfilling prophecy. You're making it to where it's not going to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, you use that as your excuse as to why you don't believe it's going to happen versus just believing. Believe, 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 and have the faith and see what's on the other side. Like believe all the way through. If you believe all the way through, because this isn't going to happen, this is where we all get testimonies of faithfulness, is when you believe all the way through, the Lord shows up. But most people quit when they starts to get close to the end, and they're like, it hasn't happened yet. And it's like, we are going until the final buzzer, right? You have to have faith until the final buzzer. You do not know that there's not that money shot at the end, that Hail Mary, whatever. So it's like, you have to have faith all the way through, not when it starts, not getting intimidated by the right, the weapons will form against you, but they won't prosper. Don't get intimidated that, you've got 1 minute left, they've got the ball, and, your MVP is injured and is on the bench. Like, does not mean the game's over. And so this is when you have to, and sorry, I like, some of you might not know sports references, but look that up. Or you've watched a movie, right? You've watched a movie where there's like a final buzzer. And so in that, right, how does it reveal lack of faith? And what are some practical ways that you can trust God more fully in your daily needs? This is tough for people. They say they have faith, but they do not actually trust God, meaning relinquish control, meaning with their daily needs, they always try to grab it back into their hand. They think, I've got to be the one to make it happen. I've got to figure it out. I've got to provide stability and security for myself. And like, almost because you want to put that pressure on yourself because you don't trust the Lord. And you're like, I think I trust myself and my ability to do it better than his, especially if you're someone that's ambitious, you're someone that is good at achieving things. And so you think you do a better job. So it's a lot harder to surrender in that. So how can you trust him more fully in your daily needs? And so let's see, because Matthew 6 is basically helping us paint a picture of what it means to live a righteous life, like what it looks like. I think the biggest thing that stands out is the not seeking attention and validation, and the hypocrisy of that. And so you'll hear me say it a lot, but this is where we can all just come into agreement of the religious leaders, of religion in general, and how it's different than this book. Because Jesus wasn't about that. Jesus was like, quit being so religious, quit putting on a show, quit faking it, quit acting like you're about this life, and just be about this life, right? And this is what it means to be about this life. You don't seek attention. You do it without any validation. You do it because it's right. You do it because you're developing your character. But how does this chapter, as you look at that and what it's like to live a righteous life, which is also one that's just of trust, it's basically intimate with the Lord. You're in secrecy with the Lord. He sees, he knows, he's providing for your needs. And it's like this whole thing of like, I don't need to be posting it public on Instagram. I don't need to go public with the relationship. And besides baptism and professing the faith of the Lord, but just meaning like, I don't need to announce everything the Lord calls me to do. It's me and him. Like, he's my ride or die. We're doing this together. But so how did reading this um, change your view or affect your view on how God cares for you? Um, And it says in your priorities in life, because again, I think the majority of people, if you don't have God, or even people that do have God, you still prioritize your title, your career, your checklist, your vision board, your right. It's very much like, I want all these things. And again, one, realizing that the Lord will provide for you, and trusting and letting him surprise you in the things that he will provide and how he will provide them, and make room for him in the story to provide what he wants to provide the way he wants to provide it. But also what it is that you're idolizing, what is it that you treasure, what is it that you give your attention and your focus and your time and your energy and your heart rate, your affection. Is it money or is it God? I love how simple it is. You cannot serve God and money. Is it material things or is it God? Is it wealth or is it God? And not wealth in God, right? Because true treasure is the wealth in God, and that's the bearing of the fruit. But saying that, are you obsessed with the material possessions of the world or God? And so checking with yourself on that and realizing you have to pick. There's not a both. There's not a one foot in, one foot out. But this is why he says, seek first the kingdom. When you seek me, wealth comes too. But when you seek wealth, you're giving me up. So it's like, why would you not pick God and get all these things added? So anyway, I hope this helps, and I hope you have a good day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.